What's up, guys? Dan here, and in this interview, we're going to be interviewing Kelby Kraft. He is a real estate agent on the buy-sell side, primarily working with investors. He has done dozens of transactions. He'll probably do 100+ transactions this year, which is an insane amount just by himself. And he's investing in real estate. And so we're going to talk with him about how he's scaled up to that point, getting to like 100 transactions a year, as well as what he's doing investing in the market. He's got 13 units. He's building them up very quickly, and some strategies he's using for financing. And then we're also going to be talking about like what the market's doing as we go into, end of 2022, 2023 and beyond, and the strategies you guys need to employ to make sure that you are going to be successful, making a ton of money and avoiding any pitfalls that may come up. All right, guys, with that, let's get right into the interview with Kelby Kraft.
Give us the backstory. What's the Kelby Kraft story, the origin story?
Yeah. All right. So I started in real estate sales. So I've been in about 10 years now. I started my career up in Nebraska under my father. He's been a top producer for several years. I think he's been in almost 35 years now. So kind of got into real estate sales under him up there, and then ended up meeting my wife, and she kind of conned me into moving down here. So next thing you know, I'm restarting my entire career down here with starting from scratch. So got in real estate sales down here. It took a while to get started, but just started hitting the phones, calling for sale by owners, and ended up picking up my first investor through for sale by owners, and then kind of snowballed from there. He referred me to another investor, and then he referred me to another one, which ended up being my main investor that I'm working with now, which we've done about, just with that guy, I've done about 50 deals this year probably. Wow. With just him. And then I've got a few other investors in California and Colorado as well. So that's on the sales side. And then investing, I got in about 2019. I bought my first property, and then that year I bought that one, and then another property. And it's kind of, picking up momentum now. I think I'm under contract on my 13th. Okay. But back when I first got in, that first deal or two, it's just completely changed. Even in 3 years since 2019, it's a completely different ballgame as far as financing and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting that it can drastically change in just a couple of years like that. But
yeah, so what are the goals? Where are you? So you got 13 now. Where do you want to get to?
So I think I'm not one of those like multiply, like I want 100 doors or 1,000 doors or anything like that. I'm kind of, I think with the point I'm at with my life, with kids and a wife and stuff like that, I'm trying to be more conservative with my investing and stuff. So I think around like 20 would be good. So I can get, basically, with the financing limits, you can only have 10 per name. So basically me and my wife, we'll put 10 in her name and then 10 in my name. So we're never on the same loan. Otherwise, obviously that's your limit to and a half. So if we do, then at that point, we should be close to about like $10,000 a month cash flow after payments and stuff, which would be, sufficient and comfortable for me. And then we'll see from then. Maybe I've always had my eyes on like self-storage and stuff like that. So maybe at that point, when I get X amount of equity where I can leverage those 20 properties into, maybe going into a storage complex, or if I find the right partners, hint, about getting into some self-storage or something, we'll see where that goes. I know there's a couple people like in the investment groups and stuff that are into self-storage. So that's something I've always had an interest for, but it's just something that has got to be the right time and the right situation because of the capital required and stuff like that sometimes on those. So
did you go to school or anything, or did you jump right into real estate, or what got you into real estate?
I went to college for like a semester, and then I was like, okay, this isn't really for me, type of thing. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was going to college for business administration, but I quickly realized that basically me and 100,000 other people in my town were doing the same thing. So my dad had been in real estate basically my whole childhood. So when the 2008 crash came, we lived through that, and we lost everything at that point. So, but I had always wanted to get in real estate, but my dad was always like, I want you to do something different because of the stress and all this stuff. But when I was I think I was 19 when I really decided that I wanted to be in real estate, So I was working at a bank at that time, being a teller, and I started taking my online classes during the downtime and stuff like that. And then I got in, I think when I was 21 is when I got in, or 20, real estate sales. And then that's kind of when I was like, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is where I want to be, I ended up excelling pretty well in real estate sales, and I was kind of like, didn't really look back at that point. So
I think Austin said you've done like a lot of transactions, last year and even this year so far. And how many transactions have you done, like, buy sell sides? And then like, how did you kind of get to that point where you're doing that kind of volume?
So when I was up in Nebraska, I was about 50-50 between list and sale, sales up there. But I wasn't really investor focused at that point. I was working with a lot of like first time home buyers and like families and, just kind of the typical average real estate. When I got down here, I really got into real estate investing when I was calling for sale by owners, and kind of just called one that was an investor, and, they're really, don't want to give you the time of day. And I kind of just grinded on him for it. It took like 2 months. And then finally one day when I called him, he was like, all right, you know what? You got the listing. You're one of the most persistent young men I've ever met, and this and that. And I had never met him at this point. So I got the listing, gave me the lockbox code, got the pictures. And then basically he had 7 that were complete rehabs already done. And I listed all 7 of those and sold them all.
Oh my gosh.
And I had never met him at this point still. And so I never even saw his face at this point. I had sold 7 for him already. And so then finally I was like, okay, do you like bourbon, or, what do you like to do, or what do you like to drink? And he's like, yeah, I like bourbon. So I went and got, all these different kind of unique bourbons, and I finally met him. But it was kind of funny because I've only met him a few times, and I've sold tons of houses for him, and he's referred me, and it kind of just snowballed from there. So once that started, that's when I started getting kind of investor focused and realized that that's more where I wanted to be with the sales side of it, just because it's more number focused, and it's all about yes or no, or, analyzing deals versus just being, no offense to like where I was with, families and stuff like that, because it is more rewarding emotionally, because you see families coming together and making dreams come true. But at the end of the day, when it comes to business for me, like analyzing a deal and, saying, is this going to work? Is this not, without all the emotion involved? And, with the other side of the sales, it kind of becomes more of like, you become a psychologist, and then you're like, you're kind of like walking them through it and like, it's okay. This is part of the deal. We'll get past this, it's just, we'll get through this inspection period. Everything will be fine, and like, you're just like, kind of like their emotional support for the whole time, especially if it's like their first deal, which there's nothing wrong with that. And there's people that are meant for that. But for me, it became more of like an emotional support than like sales, so.
Right.
What's funny is everybody we talk to says the exact same thing, including myself. It's like being in retail sales is definitely more of like an emotional support type role than actual selling.
Yeah.
You deal with a lot of like conflicting personalities that have a lot of friction in every transaction.
Yeah, it makes it tough, especially when you're like, I'm a soft person when you get close to me, but as far as like trying to be like a psychologist and stuff, that wasn't really like my ideal like career, which it really is. It really become like a psychologist at that point, because it's like everything is like, and it's like nothing against the families, because it is an emotional process and it's such a big purchase, and there's someone to fill that role. But once I got into the investor side, that's when I really started to excel, and it was just basically like, find the next deal. And I think this year I'm at like 76 transactions or something close to that. And then last year I did 59 all of last year. But this year I was on pace for like 130 transactions a year. But the market shift is really like, a lot of the experienced investors that I work with are basically moving away from the inner city. That's where all the deals are, So now they're kind of getting a whiff where these hedge funds that are buying properties are starting to miss appraisals on their purchases and stuff. I've had like 3 or 4 in the last couple months where they missed appraisals, and not the last month, it was probably 2 or 3 months ago this had happened. Sure. So my guys were kind of like, okay, well, if we can't sell to hedge funds and we can't sell to the people that are buying hundreds of houses a year, they had to move to the A, B areas, and stuff that were, and that's where everyone obviously wants to be, because the spreads are better. And then when the market crashes, there's more certainty that they'll be able to get their money out. So when that happened, that shift from like the inner city to like the A, B areas, that really, as far as my sales side, slowed things down because I was basically at a point there I was selling like 3 to 4 a week, and now I'm kind of back down to like 6 a month type of thing, just because what they want, my investors want, is obviously what every single other investor wants, where for a while there they were willing to buy in the more inner city risky areas because things were just selling like hotcakes. It didn't even matter. I mean, there was like 3-bedroom, 1-bath homes like in the inner city for they were going for like 80,000 that needed a full rehab, which, I mean, standard, those should be like $20,000-$30,000 houses. It just got so inflated with, I think, when one hedge fund buys and then another one buys and then the comps in that area, if there's 3 right there, that's what they go off of. And then what I've understood from a lot of these investors, at least in Kansas City that have been here for a long time, is that once that bottom falls out, in the inner city, it falls out. Like, once you miss one appraisal, the next one's lower, and then you can't find comps. And then once you get 6 months setback, because that's as far as appraisals will go back, once you clear that 6-month window of really no good comps there, then there's just nothing to support the values. And then it just basically falls, where they were saying, like during the last crash, basically the inner city was dropping like 70%, to where like the average market as a whole in 08 dropped like 19.6% or something like that, and in the whole country. So like the 19.6, like in the AB areas here, may have dropped like 10 to 15, but in the inner city they were getting hit at like 70%. Those investors that were there for that period are like, oh, we're not going to be the last one standing there, so.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, like, we've got a guy that we know named Troy Kearns, and he buys up a lot of that stuff in the inner city, and I think he got started. He bought up at the bottom in Las Vegas, like right post crash, and then rode it up. But definitely if you get it on the high end and go down, then you got some serious issues.
Yeah, I've done quite a business with Troy Kearns and stuff. So he was buying, like, he bought a couple from us that were like, and he like back then, whenever it was a couple years ago, he bought one like off of like, it was inner city, but it was one of the areas that was like on the edge kind of thing. And he had bought that. It was like a 2-1, but he bought it for like 40,000. So that house now fixed up is probably like a 140. So when you're like you're saying, if you buy before the market, it just, I think for like a year there, it just really got out of control, where like these wholesalers, I do a lot of business with wholesalers, and they just got greedy, and everyone got a little bit greedy there. And then now, like, they were getting $30,000 assignments and stuff like that. And now I feel like those days are pretty much over. I see a lot of deals.
We've seen a lot of wholesalers, or at least the ones we've talked to, that are starting to drop their prices. They're starting to get more creative with seller finance, creative finance, stuff like that. Like, we just had one approach us yesterday. I think they were at like 100. We needed to be at like 75,
70,
or 70, something like that. And basically, so we could do that, or we could do creative finance and pay more. Well, now he's actually come back to us and said, well, we can potentially do a creative finance, or they want a creative finance offer. So these wholesalers are really starting to feel the pain on the dispo end. I think that's kind of synonymous across the board, that everybody's starting to feel a little bit of pain on the sales cycle, slowing sales cycle.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have a listing that one of my investors had, and it wasn't rehabbed. He got into kind of some other business, like selling cars. He's selling like 40, 50 cars a month. So he wanted to move away from the rehabs and stuff like that, just because he's making way more money with what he's doing currently. So he has this house is in Independence, and it's like a very minimal rehab. I mean, you're talking like flooring, paint, like slap some countertops on, paint the cabinets, and it's like basically ready to rent.
Right.
So he has that, and we're at like 140 on it, which I thought, that's the other thing. When you're looking at comps, you go back 6 months, but it's like, unless it sold in the last month, with the way the market's it's not, if you're looking 5 months back in like the summer, those comps are hard to use, even though it's within the time frame that is you're supposed to. But so we're at 140, and we get obviously wholesalers calling, trying to lowball, and like I can sniff that out pretty quick now. So I'm like, it's not assignable, the contract. Don't try to lock it up. We had one offer that's a guy that does a lot of owner financing, and we were at 140. He's like, I could pay 120. And I told my guy, he's like, we could probably do like 129, which, I mean, coming down 11,000 off the rip is substantial, even a few months ago or a year ago, it was like, you're either
impossible. You're crazy. You're crazy.
So that happened. I was like, geez, she's willing to come down 11,000 off the rip. So then we get another lady that shows it a couple times, and they bring an offer for 130. So my guy's like, oh, let's counter like 1,000 higher just to make them feel like, because you know, if you accept the first offer,
there's like the psychology. If you just give in to what either buyer or seller, somebody gives in, then they feel like they've gotten a bad deal.
Right. So he's like, come up 1,000. I was like, well, let's do 2,000. You know, because if he said 1,000, I was like, let's go 2,000, which would basically be like us coming down 8,000. You know.
Right.
And my thinking was like, okay, 1,000 is kind of petty. 2,000 is still like at the point where you can't really counter. I mean, you could, but it's like there's only 1,000 really to give. So I was like, let's do 2,000. He's like, okay. So we come back at 132, and basically they're like, nah, we're gonna think on it for a couple of days. I was like, think on it for a couple of days. I was like, so basically on this one, the seller is giving a $2,500 buyer's agent bonus, right? I knew my seller would do 131 because he had just said that, and I was trying to just get another 1,000 for him. So I knew he would do 131, and the agent has a $2,500 bonus, and I'm like, okay, if you give 1,000 of your bonus, and you know, so you'll still get a $1,500 bonus plus your 3%, I can get the seller to come down 1,000. And she's like, okay, well, let me talk with him. And then we ended up getting the deal wrapped up then, you know, because, you know, I basically told my guy, hey, it's basically the 131, you just give 1,000 of the bonus. And we made it work. She was like a newer agent that like, we were like still negotiating at like 10 o'clock at night. She didn't really get it. And she's like, you're relentless. Yeah. It's like, the thing is, if you let a deal like that slip away for 2 days, then the next property. It's just, they'll find something else or something. And they were kind of slow to act anyways. They had seen it, I think 2 or 3 times. They wanted to keep showing it. And I was like, man, you guys are free to go see it whenever. But that just shows you the like crazy shift from like even a few months ago, where like if you can look at a property 3 or 4 times and then you can like come in 10,000 low, get a counter 8,000 low, and then still not want it. You know, it's just like, it just shows you how insanely different.
Yeah, I mean, like even for us, we just listed a property that completely turnkey. I mean, in my opinion, I think it was pretty reasonably priced. There was a house down the street, pretty similar, sold for like 190. We had it listed for 175. Real cute house, and it ended up sat on the market for like 20 days. You know, it took a little bit of time to sell. I'm like, you know, you would have listed that 3-6 months ago, you know, it'd be off the market in 2 days, 2-3 days.
Right.
So and that's where there's a drastic shift going down on, you know, even, you know, nice houses.
That's where it's kind of like for those people that like on the last rental I bought that was on the market. I buy a lot of my stuff on the market. People overlook the market thinking that there's not deals once they hit the market. Well, this one was listed at 85. I think it was listed for 6 days. I came in at like 75 or 70 or something. We landed at 80. So I got it 5,000 under asking, like 6 days on the market, which is also unheard of. And this had been on the market for, you know, 6 days with no offers. I was the only offer. And now I put like 20 into it, and I'm going to be able to get all my equity out because I'm going to be able to refinance that at like a 160 value. So I'm literally going to have $0 invested in it, and it's still going to cash flow $700 a month. On the other side, it helps, you know, investors like us that if we can get a deal under asking, but with the interest rates, you know, those suck pretty bad right now. I got one lender that quoted me at like 7.6 on that property, and I found a different lender that I paid like 3 points, you know, 3% of the purchase or the loan, and I got it down to 6.5. So even with that, though, that's going to be my best cash flowing property, including the ones that I refinanced at 3.2%. So it's kind of one of those things where you feel like, oh, there's not going to be any deals, nothing's going to cash flow, but yet like the last 2 or 3 deals, they just keep getting better, you know? So I think it comes down to...
Yeah, and that kind of goes into like our philosophy. You know, for example, we just went to Ryan Pineda's event, and one thing he said while we were out there was, you know, you'll get people like a year ago, everybody was complaining that there were no deals to be had, and there's so many buyers buying houses that it's impossible to get a deal. And so like, I shouldn't buy right now, I'm going to wait. Well, now that deals have slowed down, there's more deals becoming readily available. It's like same people are still not buying because they're complaining that now it's harder to sell properties. So it's like there's never going to be a neutral market. You know, maybe it'll be like for a month, it'll be a you know, quote unquote neutral market. But I guess our philosophy is just get better properties, get better deals, and keep moving. There's no reason to stay still and try to wait for things to happen. A big opportunity cost, I think a lot of people miss in waiting for stuff to happen in the market.
100%.
Really, which it sounds like you're doing this, but you know, just take things into your control.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's like analyzing the deal, because it's just crazy to me with how many thousands of investors in Kansas City and in like California and all these places that buy in the Midwest here. It's a very hot market for basically everywhere here. And I know like several places in Ohio, like Cincinnati, have really good, return rates and cash on cash and stuff like that. But Kansas City is one of the best markets in the whole country.
Right.
And that house had sat on the market for 6 days. And I was the only offer. And I guarantee if anyone or, all those people knew the numbers on that, they would have jumped on it immediately, because it's like if I don't pull out the cash on it, I've got about $35,000 into it with down payment, closing costs, and, the rehab, basically $35,000. And if I don't pull the equity out and do the BRRRR thing, if I just keep my initial investment, I'm going to cash flow about $900 a month on that. So, I mean, that's like, 33% cash on cash per year. So like if you did that every property for 20 years, you'd be like pushing a billionaire, just going by like Warren Buffett returned like 20%, per year for like 50 years. And he's like one of the richest people in the world, So like,
right.
The slow game kind of works. A lot of people think, I'm going to get rich in like 5 years. But if you can just like set a target, like, okay, I'm going to make 20% cash on every deal. And you do that for 20 years, you're going to be multi-millionaire. Right. It's hard for people to think that slow and steady, because it's like when I first got my first deal, I don't know if I would have thought I would have 13 deals in 2 or 3 years, basically just going slow and steady, but it starts to add up. And the more you get, like I just bought like 3 in the last 2 months, and it's just the more comfortable it gets, the more leverage you have, the safer it becomes, the more risk you can take with being safer, like I said,
right.
The risk thing, like I'm not a big risk taker. I'm not like leveraging my house. I'm not pulling home equity lines of credit out and stuff. And I'm just playing it slow and steady, and it just starts to snowball once you get going, so.
No, it does. It just takes a couple, few years to really make a sizable amount of cash flow, and just, like a 10 or plus deals to really, actually be able to use that money for anything. Because you're really only going to get like, on average, I think I've got 9 units right now, and my net cash flow after everything, mortgages and maintenance and everything, is like $3,200 a month, right? But that's at like 9 deals, so which is great. That's a good amount. I can live off that, but it's not like I'm going to be able to retire off of $3,200 a month.
I think a lot of people get caught up, like the more you make, obviously, like the more you want to spend, then you want to do this, you want to do that. Well, like $3,200 a month, if you think of like, I don't know the percentage, but 70% of retired people, like my grandma, for instance, she's on a fixed income. Basically, her income is like Social Security, her husband's Social Security, which is like $1,500 a month, $1,200 a month. They're living off like $2,700 a month, If you want to be conservative, I mean, life might not be very fun, but if you can keep your bills to like zero, if you don't have a car payment, you don't have a home payment, it's basically just groceries and how much fun do you want to have,
It's really just a great security blanket. You get that security blanket. Once you get that built, then you can start working on, because I think the whole goal, and this is really what we're trying to preach for the channel, but is to, replace your everyday expenses with cash flow. Whatever you can cash flow is what you can spend. So if you can first get your safety net replaced, once you get that replaced, then you can start working on your disposable income and having fun.
And I think a big thing for like a lot of people, if they're listening to this, like the whole key is keeping your expenses low, because if you're one of those people that's just like spending, you'll never reach that financial freedom to where me, like personally, just growing up through the crash and losing everything, I'm really cautious about like taking out loans on liabilities, and like I have no debt besides the property. So like for me personally, I've got 2 kids, and I could live off of my cash flow plus my budget. I've got about $2,000 a month extra, so literally I could retire now and be safe. But if I had a $50,000-$60,000 car, my wife had a car, we had a boat on payments, that changes the whole aspect, so I think a lot of people listening to this, like once you do start getting properties, if you can cut your expenses to zero, then your cash flow, 3,200, 8 properties, you can literally have financial security forever. And then everything else you make, like you're saying, you can just invest it and keep investing. But I think a lot of people get caught up on like, I'll never be able to be financial secure. It's like, it's all about how much you spend,
It is,
that number as low as possible and get your cash flow high. You can reach financial freedom in a few years. It's hard for Americans to think like that, because as soon as you get like your net worth up to $1 million, you think, I can go buy like $100,000 car and I can do this. And if you keep doing that, you'll never like, for instance, my father, he makes, $300,000-$400,000 a year, but he's got less, he's always, he drives like a $70,000 car. His car payment's like $850 a month. He's got a house. It's like all these expenses where he's like 60 and I'm in a way better financial, state than he is. And he's been making $300,000 a year for like 30 years, it's like,
right.
It doesn't matter how much you make. It's all for the people listening about your monthly bills.
Well, I think what a lot of it is just shifting your mindset from using what you earn, your active income, to pay for your daily necessities, to trying to get to the point where you can use your passive income to pay for your daily necessities. Like a lot of people, this is why that's why everybody's broke, is because they're always eating into their nest egg. But you want to eat, you want to eat off the yield from your nest egg. You don't actually eat into the nest egg. I think that's what a lot of people miss. Just kind of spinning off that I would tell people to do is especially starting out, I would definitely cut your expenses. At a certain point, you can maybe increase your expenses, but only when you've built enough of a stability through cash flow that you can afford it.
Yeah, like all my expenses come out of the account basically that I transfer over from my rental cash flow. So like my wife still works, all that money's saved, like all my income from real estate sales is saved. So, and then once you get that money saved, you can, you can start buying properties at a lot faster rate once you get all the expenses covered.
So how's the dynamic look with having a family? I think that's something we have yet to experience.
Yeah, it's definitely not like the good old days, with whatever you want to call it. I mean, kids are great and all that, but yeah, it's just definitely, obviously more stress involved, because my wife still works just because we want that extra security, and she enjoys her job mostly, is why she keeps working.
Right.
But it just, basically, I come home from work, it's like eat dinner, get the kids ready for bed, and go to sleep, So basically, my free time is basically when I'm working, So that's why it's important to love what you do, because otherwise it's like, especially with kids and a wife and all that. Me and my wife, kids, we all get along great. But if you don't enjoy what you do for 8 hours, 10 hours a day, and then you come home and you just basically, eat, put the kids to bed, go to sleep, it's like, then your life really becomes really unenjoyable, So I would say for the people listening too, like if you enjoy your job, and you don't want to get into real estate full time, there's plenty of people that work something they enjoy and love for 8 hours a day, and then also real estate invests on the side. Like my wife, she doesn't want to quit working because she literally would have less fun at home. It would be more stressful for her. So she keeps working. She loves it. And, and we're also investing in, doing that. So it's, I think a big part of like enjoying life is doing what you like to do. So it's not like, when can I stop working? It's kind of like, build this. So then, like you're saying, like a fallback kind of thing where you always have that security and you can do what you enjoy for however long you want to. And then you have the freedom to say, oh, I want to do this now with my life or whatever. And that's what, the whole goal is, I think, is for me, my whole goal is to spend time with family, so like I'm trying to do all this so I can basically, which we do now, like we spent a month in Mexico this last summer and, do stuff like that to where like, that's my whole goal is family time, so the more cash flow, the more security I have, the more family time I can spend. So that's what life's about for me. But
that's an awesome goal, man.
So I guess kind of going back, because, another goal of the channel is to try to help the audience learn how not only invest, but learn how to increase their active income. So we're kind of shifting off that, like what have you, like obviously getting to 60, 70, 80, 100 transactions. I mean, it takes a lot of you have to put some systems in place. I mean, you can't do that. It's just a one-man show. Maybe you can, but you'd be working yourself to death, which I imagine you work pretty hard.
Yeah.
But is there like certain systems you put in place? I mean, like transaction coordinators, things of that nature that maybe like the audience could take away to grow their own business?
Yeah. So I'm really good at sales, but I hate the paperwork side of deals, So like when it comes to that, I mean, there was a period where I had 20 commission checks out there, and I literally just, to finish the loose ends on each transaction, like I'd literally rather die than do that, So you got to a point where it was like, it took a while, but I got a transaction coordinator that handles like all my paperwork, she's almost like an assistant. I pay her per deal, and it's like I text her, I need an amendment, she does it, and it frees up so I can do the things I enjoy. So whatever you do, whether it's like real estate sales or whatever, right. I would say the biggest system to get in place for you is the things you're not good at, or the things that are most time consuming, or that you hate the most.
Right.
Put someone else in charge of that, because everyone's good at different things, so you may be good like me, at sales, but you're not good at like the paperwork side of it. So for me, it costs me money per deal, but when I think about it, it allows me to just run free and sell, so
do more deals.
Yeah, exactly. And that's true with a lot of businesses, whether you own a different business or whatever. Get a secretary if you don't like doing the paperwork side of things. I mean, that's something I noticed with a lot of the contractors I use. I mean, man, I tell people, it's like if you could literally put the whole puzzle together, as far as like, so you're like, if you get a plumber, they're good at their job, but they're unreliable. They're bad at sales, If you get, what I'm saying, you got to have sales team, you got to have like someone that knows what they're doing, and then like an office administration for that. So like, that's a big thing. I think that goes true with a lot of businesses. Like, it took me 3 or 4 years to find a plumber that had all those things. And even now, he doesn't really have the office, like the billing, like sometimes it'll take a month to get a bill from him, but he's good at his job and he's reliable, so like, if you can get all those things in place, like if you're not good at the office administration, hire somebody. If you're not good at sales, do that. And if you're good at your job, stick to that, so it would just be like the things that you don't like, or the things that are hard for you, even if it costs you money, it's going to make your job more enjoyable and let you excel at what you're good at, so
100%.
And I think that's a big thing for us as well. I mean, I was just telling Daniel the other day that, whenever, sure, it's hard work, doing some of the things that we do. It's not like, it's not a cakewalk ever. You definitely have to put a lot of effort into it. But when you love doing it, I mean, the hard work isn't really hard. It's like you got to deal with an eviction, or you have to deal with turning over a property, or whatever it is that's
deal falls through.
For people, not saying it's enjoyable for us either, but when you truly just enjoy the numbers and thinking about like creative real estate, creative finance, all these different things, it really makes hard work not so difficult, to where you can continue to push forward and accomplish and discover new parts of real estate.
And I think it's not even just much of the enjoyment, it's like the commitment to the goals you're trying to achieve, like really helps you, working for yourself and getting to where you want to be with the financial freedom and like the family and, whatever goals you may have. Like that's what's going to pull you through like the really tough situations.
I agree. Yeah.
Where it's like, it's not going to be fun, it's going to suck, but you're going to like not mind doing it because it's going to get you to where you need to go. Guys, if you're liking Kelby, go ahead and hit that like button until it turns blue, and hit subscribe for more awesome interviews.
That's a big thing, is like having goals, like at least for like someone like me, like I've always got to be moving forward. My wife's like, when are we going to be done? It's like, I'm not planning on being done, because it's like,
it's not about being done.
Like if I don't have a little bit of stress and pressure, then I'm not a big depressed person, but I start getting kind of in a stagnant area where it's just kind of like you're going through the motions, and I like to wake up and be like, I've got this to do. I got to do this. I want to, find another deal. I want to do that. And it's like, some people don't have that. Some people do. But I think even if you don't have that, like to have a next milestone to say, like, I'm going to buy my first property, like, whatever, next March, or I'm going to buy my second one. And just to have something to always be working towards, because then, like you're saying, when things get difficult, or you're like, man, this sucks, you're like, I got to reach that goal,
Right.
And you reach it, set another one, and and don't be afraid of setting too high, because that's the thing. Like I do that a lot. Like I'll be like, I want to buy 2 properties this year, and then I do it by like June. And I'm like, okay, well now I got to keep adjusting my goals, So like this year it was like, I want to sell 75 properties and do X amount in sales, and it's like I did that by like September, and then it's like, okay, then you're readjusting goals and stuff, which
right. It's a good thing to have, hitting your targets early.
I think that's something that we've tried to do as well. Like I think last year we kind of set a goal. We wanted to flip like 24 houses this year, which we're not going to hit 24. We'll probably hit maybe 12 this year, rehabs. But even if you miss, well, it's like setting your goals high makes you make it a good enough effort to actually achieve some pretty, unreasonable stepping stones or mile points. Like next year, I'm hoping that we can get to or scale to flipping 40 houses.
40, yeah.
So even if we fall short, not planning on doing it, but you know, if we flip 20 or 30, I mean, that's still going to be a big accomplishment for us.
Kind of like the laundry thing, you know, if you give yourself one day to fold your laundry, do your laundry and fold, it's going to be done in one day. But if you give yourself a week to do it, you won't be doing it until the next week rolls around. So just like
exactly,
got to set your goals high to get you moving. So I think like kind of going back to like, just to put it in perspective for people that you were saying like, oh, like now's not the right time, or I'm going to wait until values drop, or I'm going to wait until interest rates drop. It's just like, to put it in perspective for me, at least, like, you know, to explain to people listening that like none of that matters, because like for instance, when I bought my first one in 2019, I only put, back then they were letting you put 15% down, you know, you weren't paying any points. So it's 15% down and then closing costs. So like my first property only cost me like, I don't remember, like 15,000 or something to buy, right? The values were lower then, but you know, the interest rate, I don't know, I think it was like around 4 or 5 or whatever. So that property that I bought at such a low interest rate and such a low purchase price is one of my least best performing properties, you know? And like the one I just bought this last month that I just finished a rehab on, the interest rate is like higher than all the other properties. The price point, like compared to what I would have got it for 3 years ago, is higher than all the other ones. So those two things that people would like deter people from buying properties, both those things going against me, it's still my best performing property by like almost 1.5 times, you know? So like, just to put it in perspective, it's like people saying, I'm gonna wait for values to drop. It's like, well, my first one, values were, you know, 40% lower than they are now. And the interest rates were like 40 or 60% or 50% of what they are now.
Yeah, right.
So it's like, if that happens again, where values drop again and interest rates drop again, that could still be your least best deal, you know, like looking at my history of my deals, you know? So like all that stuff's irrelevant if you can just look at the deal and just get going. So I wouldn't put it off for anything. You know, a lot of people, like I've been in sales for almost 10 years now, and I had people that, you know, when freaking rates, they were down to like 2% and they went up to 3.5%, 4%. And they're like, oh, we're going to wait for rates to go back down. It's like, well, those people now, they're, you know, still waiting, and the values are literally like damn near twice as much as they were 10 years ago or more. Right. And the interest rate is like 1.5 times what they are. So literally that amount like costs them, you know what I'm saying, hundreds of thousands of dollars waiting. And this, for instance, like I had someone last year, I don't do a lot of this, like I said, and most of my stuff's investors, but I had a single lady that I'd sold a house to before. And she was just being so picky with this property that she wanted. And she's like, oh, my bedroom furniture won't fit in here and all this. I'm like, you might need to buy a new bedroom furniture. You can buy your house, you know, and stuff. So she's just being overly picky. Her budget was like $200,000 at that point. Being so picky. Well, here we are this year. And her pre-approval, I haven't checked recently since the rates went out of control. But like at the beginning of this year, like she was at a $200,000 pre-approval. Well, then she went down to like a 160 pre-approval.
By 120 now.
40, yeah, she lost 40 on her pre-approval amount. Plus the houses she was looking at for 200 a year ago are now 230. So she literally had like a $70,000 plus swing in her buying power. You know what I'm saying, within a year. So it's like, and I was telling her, and I tell everyone, it's like, you know, it's never a bad time to buy. It's like if you're waiting for rates to go down, like for me, buying all these rental properties at 7% or whatever, my whole thing is if you can cash flow now, whenever the rates, if you're like, people are like, oh, rates are going to go back down. Well, when they do, you refinance, you pull equity out, and you save money per month. Like we had that first property I bought, like during 2020, which was like a year after I bought it. When the rates were down low, I refinanced it at 3.2%, dropped the PMI off because I only put 15 down originally. So I refinanced at 3.2%. I pulled $30,000 cash out, and my payment went down $20 a month. Wow. So I got a check for $30,000 tax-free, plus my payment went down like 15 to 20 a month. It was like, you know what I'm saying? So if something like that happens again in the future, and you don't buy properties, you have nothing to pull out of. But if you buy 10 during this period, you could literally pull out like $200,000 or whatever cash, tax free, plus, you know, your payment could go down on everything, you know? So it's like, there's never a bad time. And if they don't go back down and you're locked in at 7% and they're 10%, then you got a deal there, you know? So it's just, can't go wrong, like whatever way you look at it, just getting into it. So I think that's where a lot of people are like analyzing deals. It's just like, get one. If you can cash flow anything now, the future we'll see, so.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like the timeless stock market strategy of like dollar cost averaging, but just applying that to real estate. You just got to buy all the time. And as long as the numbers pencil on deals, it doesn't matter what rates and prices are, because ultimately all that matters is how can you buy it and how can you never lose it?
Right.
Make sure.
I mean, like some of these deals like that I just recently bought, like I'm going to do a rehab on them. And I'm like, in 6 months when I refinance, I'm like, I could pull out, 40, 30,000 on each one of those deals and have all this tax-free money, like 100,000 or so tax-free money. But like, it all depends on the rate. Like if the rates go up, I'm still going to cash flow on all those deals, plus get a lump sum of cash. So as long as you can cash flow something, I mean, a lot of guys in California and stuff like that, like they negative cash flow out there. So like if you buy a rental, like you might rent that for $2,000, but your payment's going to be $3,500. So it's literally cheaper in California to rent than to buy. So like if they can buy here, a lot of my guys can buy here, and they're like, as long as I can break even on cash flow or just cover repairs, I'm good, because cash flow is only one aspect of the whole thing, which is the least actually important, because your other, the most important thing is actually your appreciation. So like a lot of people get that confused. Like, so during, what was it, 2021, I think that we had like 20% on average increase in values or something in KC, which is just crazy. So that year, I think I had like 5 properties, and it was like, I cash flow like all combined, for the year, maybe like 30,000, which is like, okay, that's good. A lot of people get focused on their cash flow, 30,000, but where the real money was 20% on $1 million worth of real estate. I added like 200,000 of my net worth that year. Well, that's where the money is, over time. It's not
right.
People get caught up on like, how much is this probably going to make me? But and then you're paying down your mortgage on each one of those too. So if you can do 2 of the 3 aspects, which appreciation is mostly the biggest one, I mean, typically, even on a average, 4% per year appreciation, like I've got up to 2 million in real estate now. And if I even appreciate at 4% a year, which recently it's been a lot higher just because the market's crazy, but on average, say 4%. On 2 million, that's 80,000 a year. I'm adding to my net worth, to where I'm only cash flowing, 50. If you're breaking even on cash flow, but you're adding 50, 60, 70, 80, 90,000 to your net worth every year, that adds up pretty quick. And then you're also paying down your mortgage. So it might seem like, oh, I'm only making 100 a month. Well, you're not. You're making a hell of a lot more than that, because you're making your cash flow plus your pay down, which is at least going to be 100 a month usually. And then you got your appreciation, which even at 4% is 400 a month, So I think a lot of people just get caught up on that, like, oh, I'm not making that much per month, but like, it's more about the long game and where you're headed, over time.
Right. And I think so for us, obviously our big metric is cash flow. Obviously just for holding purposes, we don't ever want to have a period. It's unlikely that rents will go down, but if they were to go down, or for whatever reason, we don't want to have a liquidity crisis. So that's the big priority for us is cash flow, and for that reason. But the one thing, like especially these high income individuals, that they'll do, which I'd mentioned to you, Kelby, is the depreciation tax benefits are a huge thing. A lot of these, which this is not tax advice, talk to your CPA, but a lot of these people will do like a cost segregation or speed up the depreciation on properties to offset their taxes. Like that's one thing Ryan Pineda said was if he does a cost segregation on a property, let's say it offsets like $100,000 property offsets like 10 grand in taxes. It's like, well, how much cash flow is that in a year? So that is one thing that a lot of people overlook. Obviously we don't want to buy anything where we're losing money every month. If we can at all avoid it, just for the fact we want to be able to hold stuff indefinitely. But there are a lot of other benefits to real estate that I think people miss out on.
Because like you said, with these like BRRRR deals and stuff where we're flipping, once we factor in the mortgage payment with these higher rates and maintenance costs, I mean, we're barely positive cash flowing, but that's with basically no money out of pocket. It's just equity that we've built into the deal. So we're willing to do that deal because we know that like down the road we can pull money out, or rents will go up and things like that. And we're, you know, it's an asset, it's depreciable, things like that. Because like, and what you said about appreciation, like that's, you know, when you're getting 4%, it's not on the money you have invested, it's on the total value of the property. So like if you have 20% in a property and it goes up 20%, you've actually doubled your money.
And the, you know, like the depreciation is really huge. You know, a lot of people, I mean, like, and this is why there's so many millionaires made in real estate, is because like people, if you don't pay any taxes, that's a 30 or 40% advantage over any other industry in the world. You know, it's like, you know, a person making $1 million a year, maybe they get taxed $400,000 or $500,000. Whereas in real estate, if you set up, you know, the right plan with your accountant, right, and CPA, you know, you should be able to avoid the majority of your taxes. Maybe, you know, 30 or that. Maybe you only get taxed at $100,000, and not because you're going against the tax codes, but just because you're following what's incentivized by the IRS.
Yeah, I don't think like over the few years that I've been doing this, like I pay taxes on my real estate sales, you know. So like as far as my rental income, as long as you keep buying properties, like you're saying with the depreciation, if you can, which I haven't got into, you had mentioned that to me, I'm going to look into that, the cost, you know, segregation. But even with the normal just expenses with buying another rental and all that, it's almost like a wash every year, you know, between all the write-offs and stuff. I mean, I might pay a little bit in taxes, but I pay most of my taxes on my income. So if like I'm starting to get into these last few ones that I bought, now that I got a little momentum where I'm going to do the BRRRR strategy, like you're saying, I might, you know, cash flow $200 a month to cover my expenses and a little more. But I get that money tax free, you know. So like when I pull out $30,000, if I'm trying to get into some, you know, diversify my income streams a little bit more with the real estate sales, just because I never know when my last sale is going to be, you know. Hopefully everything continues going, but you know, if you can get to the point where you're doing even like, you know, 8 to 10 BRRRRs a year and you're only cash flowing $200 per deal, but if you're pulling $30,000 per deal and you do 10 of them, you get basically $300,000 tax free, plus your cash flowing, you know, a little bit, you know, you're breaking even maybe on the cash flow after expenses. Maybe you're making, you know, $1,000 a month, but then you've got your other, you know, the other factors that we're talking about, the appreciation and all that. So it's like, you could really set it up to where you could just live off your refinances,
right?
Basically be, you know, no tax liability if you just did that. You know, obviously if you're flipping, you've got your capital gains and stuff like that and income tax, but that's one strategy, you know, the BRRRR thing, where I'm starting to get into where like the last few, I'm going to just basically in 6 months from now, I'll have the option, if the rates are decent enough, I can either keep my money in it or refinance all that and get like basically, you know, $100,000+ check. And then that could, you know what I'm saying, with the amount of bills I have plus my cash flow. I mean, that adds up. It doesn't take very many BRRRRs to get your initial investment back plus an extra 20 or whatever. You know, you may not cash flow a bunch now with the rates, but you could literally just live off that. You know, if you do even a few of those a year, it's pretty crazy. So,
because it's still, you know, refinance money is it's actually, you know, better than selling, because you don't have to pay taxes on it. You know, the property's paying for the loan, and that's the big thing. I mean, it's not taxed, like you don't have to pay closing costs and things like that, and commissions and everything else if you go to sell your property.
It's a huge whack to sell a property. I mean, you smaller concessions. I mean, even for us, we still pay buyer's agent's commission unless we bring our own buyer. Taxes are a huge thing. There's just a laundry list of things that just add up very quickly. I mean, you probably lose out on you know, 30 or 40% of the equity that you could have had in your property just by selling it.
Exactly. And then you're also, you know, if you don't sell it, you're holding it, which goes back to like, then you got appreciation, you got all those benefits for a lifetime versus kind of like a one and done type thing. Like that's the thing with these new deals. I've been running the number, and it's just like you're saying, you're losing like 30 to 40% of like whatever net worth or added value to your name. Like, I mean, you know, it's like I can either make 50,000, you know, a lump sum, or I can basically get 30,000, 25,000 back, or, you know, 30,000 probably. So yeah, I'm losing out on 20 grand, but I'm not paying 35% on 50,000, which then that bumps it down to like a $10,000 difference. And then in the first year, if I'm gaining 4%, I gain back 5,000 of that. So that leaves me a gain of 5,000. Plus in the first year, I'm going to cash flow 300 a month. It's like you basically break even, you know, after that first year of holding, plus you have 30% equity when you refinance. So it's just, if you can, I'm a big believer in, like, at least for where I'm at, is like holding properties. Once I get to that, maximum where I would have to do a commercial loan, like you can have 10 per person. Once me and my wife get to 20, then I'm not big on like the commercial loan, depending on where rates are and stuff. But I'll probably at that point, then I'll probably just slowly sell them off, sell one, buy another one, hold it, probably sell my least performing one, get my 30% plus the appreciation out of it, and then kind of just keep like that. I know that's not a lot of people's strategy because they want to get X amount of doors, but mine's kind of like a minimal type of risk where I can just kind of cycle them in at that point, but my wife keeps saying, when's enough, we got to start selling. I don't want to,
Something tells me you're going to get to 20 and want more.
Yeah.
Austin only wanted 20 when he started.
I don't know, man. It's for me. I think I had a very similar mindset for a long time, and I don't know what it is. I mean, the past like year or so, I've definitely shifted from maybe wanting to get to 20 or 30. But basically, I can make 100 or 200 grand a year from cash flow to I want to make 400 or 500 grand a year in cash flow.
Yeah, you're going to too many of those events and stuff.
They're getting me all hyped up, man.
$1 million a month.
It's crazy. Like, one thing that was super mind opening, and I keep going back to this event, but it really changed. A lot of my mindset was like, are you familiar with Alex and Layla Hormozy?
I don't think so.
I sent you their YouTube, but basically, I went out there, and Layla opens up, and she, she just right out the gun, flat out says, since the age of 24, the past 7 years, I've been making over 1.2 million a month, which, I mean, it's not, at that point, it's not at all about the money. But, like, to me, the money would definitely help to be more charitable and do some of the things that you want to do, being able to help. A big goal of mine, like, I'd like to be able to retire my mom one of these days, like things like that, so just like if you have the right goals, money can do a lot of good things for your life.
And, I have to admit, like, honestly, I was like, 10 was my mark, initially it was like, if I can get to 10, then I'm good. Now I'm like at 13. Now it's like, okay, 20. So I know what you're saying, but like, to me too, it's kind of the same thing where it's like, my wife's still working. She enjoys it. Like, we could literally live off the cash flow. I think we're up to like $7,000 a month now, where our bill's like $5,000 with the kids and all that. So now it's not like really a point of like, which I was striving for so long, as getting financially free where we can support, if something happens with real estate, something happens, that we're safe. But now we're there, and it's more of like the rush and excitement of like reaching my next goal,
Yeah,
exactly. It becomes really fun to me. It's like, now I can start buying like 2 at a time. And, like for me, I'm taking a little bit of risk, but it's exciting. And it's like, the risk is not as risky when you have 10 properties, because it's like, oh, if my account goes to zero, I just sell one of my properties and boom, have, $80,000 cash immediately, So it's like, your cash on hand may get a little uncomfortable, like mine is, but it's like comforting to know if you have multiple properties that you can liquidate one at any point, and if you've got equity in it, that bumps you right. If you have to take 5 steps forward and 1 step back, sell one property to liquidate, that wouldn't be the worst thing, and that would be worst case scenario for me. Would be basically, I have 13 now. If cash gets low, I sell one, I still have got 12. So the more you build, the more security it is, because it's like, then you can just, if worst case scenario where your cash is really low and something backfires on the refinance or something, you've got so many properties that it's just, if you sold 2, then you're back up to 150,000 cash on hand, so.
Well, and I think a lot of people don't know this, I would recommend this to everybody out there, is, have access to all your capital. I mean, even if you're not using it, like what we've done is Daniel's, he's got a couple lines of credit against his properties. Like, a lot of people don't realize you can get like, 75, 80% loan to value line of credit. It's like a second lien against the property. Basically, even if you're not using it, worst case scenario, you've got the line open. That way, if you ever need the capital, you have access to it. But like, I mean, you got to be careful with it. But I think I personally would tell people that they should look into getting like lines of credit just for access of capital.
Yeah, I think that's something I need to do with my personal house. I don't want to put it on the line, but Like my wife was like, isn't that kind of risky? It's like, well, it's risky if you don't have something to liquidate to pay it off. You know,
I would say it's riskier by not having access to the line.
Right.
You're not actually drawing that money out until you're using it.
Yeah, and I think like I'm saying, when you get more properties behind you, it's a lot safer. Like, I mean, I don't think you want to put, I mean, it's up to you, obviously. Like, I know people that'll put their house on the line with one property, but when you have multiple properties, it's like, okay, you've got $50,000 debt on your house, but you've got, $600,000 in equity in these 10 properties. It's like you sell one of them, you pay it off. So the risk level goes down substantially, and it's just about, stacking the properties. Even if you're not cash flowing, that equity, that appreciation every year adds up. And the more you get, like you're saying, it's on the total amount of the value. So like I've got $2 million in real estate, but I've got $1 million in loans on it, so basically I get my appreciation on the 2 million every year, even if it's 1%. That's 20, you know what I'm saying? So it's just the more you add up. So yeah, that's something definitely I'm going to get into. And I know for people locally that Community America here in Kansas City does 100% loan to value on the home equity lines of credit on your personal home. So I know a lot of, like, my bank that I bank at, where my friend's a manager at Security Bank of Kansas City, they only do like 79% and stuff like that. So I mean, if you can get 100%, that's like substantially, I'm saying from 100 to 80, especially if you have a $300,000 house, you're talking 60,000 extra. And like, you're saying, just as a fallback, just to have the cash there, because right now I don't have that, and it's really crippling, because basically now I'm at a point where I'm having to basically like pay cash, and then it's a thing called delayed financing. So I got a lender that you pay cash for it, and then right after closing, because the wholesale deals, lenders won't loan on the assignment, plus wholesalers don't want you taking a loan out. So I pay cash for it, and then the day after closing, I send to the lender the closing statement, the HUD. And they'll take that number, whatever it is, 70,000, and they'll do a delayed financing. So as long as the house appraises for 30% more than what you bought it for, they'll give you the full investment back. So which a lot of people don't know about that. And I had several lenders that were telling me they can only give 70% of the actual purchase price, not the assignment included, right? So like on this one, I'll give you a scenario of the one I bought cash for 70. Well, there was a $16,000 assignment on it, right? So the lender saw, basically, she was only going to give me, so that's 54,000 actual purchase price at the top, right? So she was going to give me the 54,000 and then 70% of that. So if I did the delayed financing, I was only going to get 30,000, plus it's about 6,000 in closing costs. So at that point, it's like, it doesn't make sense. Well, I've got a lender now that will take the full amount, which is 70,000. I paid for it, and then as long as it appraises for like 100 on this case scenario, they'll give me all 70,000 cash back to my pocket.
And they do it just based on the appraisal.
Yeah, as long as it appraises for 70% of what you bought it for. So like mine, for instance, I bought it for 70. I put a wall up to make it a legal third bedroom, and put a closet in there. It cost me about $2,000. Made it a third bedroom. I didn't do anything else to it. It appraised for 124. Well, they don't give you 70% of 124. They'll only give you, 70% of the full investment, if that makes sense. So
gotcha. So 70 LTV. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So basically, since I paid cash for it, I paid 70 cash for it. It appraised over 100. So they gave me all 70,000 cash back. So I have $0 invested in this, minus from the $1,500 that I put the wall up. So I've got $1,500 invested, and I'm going to be able to rent that for, $1,300, and the payment's like $600.
Wow.
So, that delayed financing piece for me, it works because I get all my cash back, but it's kind of messed up because I'm paying I think I paid like $6,000 in closing costs, and, all the points and all that I paid. So if I had a home equity line of credit, instead of paying that $6,000 in fees, which is basically 10% on, damn close to 10% on 70,000,
right?
I could use my home equity line of credit, which is 3% per year, basically in 6 months, do a refinance, pull more money out, plus pay my home equity line of credit and get a lump sum of cash. So the delayed financing piece, though, for a lot of people that are tight on cash or want their cash back right away, that's a great piece, because I just got a $68,000 check from the delayed financing, and I'm going to do it again on these two I'm buying. And this lender doesn't have a minimum. So if anyone's interested in his information, that's a game changer, because basically the one lender was going to give me $30,000 is all, and he gave me basically my full investment back. So as long as it'll appraise for more than you would, 30% more to 70%, then you'll get all your cash back on investment, which then, with that 70, this one doesn't really need a rehab, but I got a $70,000 check. If I put, 20 into it, and then in 6 months refinance it, I'm going to get another check back, so versus having, basically the other option would be for me to have 70,000 on the line for 6 months until I can refinance it, so it's a kind of like a cheat code as far as that, because it's a way to get your cash back right away without having to go hard money. My other option would have been to save my 70,000, do hard money, and then do the delayed financing, but then you're paying fees on the hard money plus the closing cost loan. So
how much is the or how fast once you close do they typically do you get the appraisal after the rehab's over?
So on this one specifically, I didn't even have to do a rehab. I just added a wall to make it a third bedroom because I know that's what it would take. But if I did do a rehab, like if I painted and did the floors and stuff like that, as soon as that's done, you can order the appraisal. So like on this one, since it's delayed financing, it has to be like pretty close after you did the
close. Yeah.
I think this one, I got the documents. I was going to go with this other lender. Numbers weren't working, so I switched to this lender, and I had him order the appraisal, and by the time the appraisal was done, the wall was already put up and I had the closet in. So it was kind of like a typical 30-day type of from the time I closed my cash, within 30 days I had the check back basically. So and I think it was 68,100 and I put 70,000 even on it. So if you did a quick rehab, because a lot of the times if you buy it, it's not necessarily going to appraise for 30,000 more than you bought it without doing anything. You have to get a really good deal. But for instance, I was telling my wife, if this one hadn't appraised for 100, then I would have just slapped some countertops in there, painted the cabinets, put some flooring in. I could have done that within a week, had the appraiser come back out and got my investment back. So
yeah, we've done something similar to get around seasoning periods. I think that's kind of why we've stuck with commercial financing, is because just they're more lenient with terms and seasoning periods and all these different things, which I think for people out there, that's a big thing to take into account, is how long you have your capital tied up.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's something with me, because I don't do a lot of BRRRR. This is my first few, and it's basically when I'm running my numbers, I have to be comfortable where if interest rates go up to 8.5%, because if I run my numbers at the current rate and they go up 1.5% and I'm negative cash flowing, then I should have sold it up front versus waiting until it's tenanted and then I'm not going to get my full value. So for me, the seasoning period is huge, like you're saying, because it's in 6 months, especially with the uncertainty in the market,
who knows? You
got to be in a situation where you can liquidate and get, your investment. It kind of has to work as a flip or a BRRRR, because otherwise
you need to have multiple exit strategies right now, or else it's going to be very easy here very soon to lose your shirt.
Yeah, because if I'm running my numbers currently at these numbers and it's I'm going to cash flow 300, that cash flow could be gone if rates. And honestly, I don't know. People are a lot of lenders I'm talking to, I don't know, they're getting filled full of stuff saying, oh, rates are going to go back down, but everyone has their own opinion, but they're not going down anytime soon. The inflation is out of control, and this and that, and all these uncertainties where rates go up to 10%, 11%, you know what I'm saying? And then the values go down. You got to be in a situation where you're comfortable, holding it. And if the big thing for me is every time I run specifically for me, I got to make sure that I can hold it without pulling the equity out, So I can continue to hold it and be maybe low on cash, but at least hold it and without having to get that refinance out, So the way I do it is these three. It's if the rates do stay low or, go up a little bit, I can pull that equity out. But if rates are super high, I can hold off on refinancing it until it makes sense cash flow wise, So you're saying, you want to have multiple strategies, whether it's sell, refinance, or just hold and not pull the equity out, you know? So, and that's the big thing with me with doing the delayed financing is basically like for this one, I did the delayed financing, got a $70,000 check. If I hadn't done that in 6 months, if rates go up substantially, I've got $70,000 plus the rehab on the line, you know? So I pay the closing costs up front to get all my initial investment back. Then all I have to fork out is basically the rehab part. So the only amount of money I'll have on the line is the $20,000 rehab. And then if I can't refinance, then I just have $20,000 on the line and I'm cash flowing $500-600 a month, you know? So
yeah, which is substantial. And you got like $50,000, $55,000 in equity in the deal. You know?
Yeah. I want to get into some self-storage though. So I don't know. I'm looking for partners or something, some way to do that. I know me and Austin have talked about that, but you know, it's just you got to find the right deal and someone that will do it.
We're probably. I mean, I think for us, we're trying to focus really hard on single family because we could get like an apartment building, but I think it's just gonna like we could flip like 12 houses or do like an apartment building, and I would rather just focus on one thing than trying to divert ourselves. So I think at least here for the next 6 to 12 months, we're probably gonna focus pretty heavy on just doing the single family stuff.
I agree. And I think a lot of people get caught up on like doors, you know, so they're like, I want a duplex, I want a triplex, I want a fourplex. And I talk to these investors from California and it's like, dude, I tell them instead of buying one duplex, if you buy 2 single family homes, yeah, they're harder to find 2 deals, but you're going to have more equity or the same equity.
Exactly. You know, it's like we could, I'm confident we could raise, you know, a few $1 million and go syndicate a deal. I mean, we've got enough connections at this point that like we could go and syndicate a deal and have no equity in it, you know, like a 30, 40, 50 unit building. But it's like, I think the big thing for us is just trying to stay focused on one thing and not like, we're going to be able to make more money focusing on one thing than trying to divert ourselves into 10 different things.
I'm a big believer in single family, man. Like you can liquidate them. You can liquidate them quicker. I believe they appreciate quicker. I mean, they're 2 assets that, I mean, if you've got like this apartment complex, my investor in Colorado is interested in, it's like a 22 unit in KCK. Numbers are great and stuff, but it's been on the market like 7 months, you know? So it's like, if you ever have to liquidate that, man, I could sell, there's 22 units. I could sell all 14 of my properties in like a month and a half in a bad market. 2 months, I could have from list to close all my cash to where you get a $2 million complex. If you ever need your equity out of that, dude, you're going to be sitting for a while. Plus, I don't think apartment complexes, I don't know the numbers, but I don't think like in 2021, I don't think they appreciated 20% like single family homes, you know? There's just not the demand because single family homes, investors want them, families want them, you know, first time home buyers want them. And there's just so much more demand. And I feel like they're better assets in general. I see when people want to go to apartment complexes like my investor in Colorado because for him to buy 22 single family homes,
difficult.
And that many deals would be like, it's a 2-year process, even if you don't buy great deals, even if you just buy ones that cash flow. So I understand if you're trying to scale or if you want to be hands off, but for a lot of investors, for me, like if you're just wanting a few units where you're not trying to get to 200, 300 units, if you're just trying to make a successful piece for yourself, I've diverted a few of my investors from Colorado and California, and they're like, I want a duplex. It's like, but their single family home that I got them is cash flowing damn near as much as the duplex was. Plus you have 1 tenant. Plus if you ever, you know, you got liquidation super easy. You can pull money out quicker. You know, there's so many benefits where people get kind of wrapped up in that. But I mean, everyone's strategy is different. But I think for a lot of first time investors, I mean, if you're going to do the, you know, house hacking, obviously like multi-units better so you can put less down. But if you're like a investor that's going to put 25% down or 20% down regardless, that's the other thing with multifamily, you got to put, you know, now we're talking like 25% or more down. And so there's just, it's more expensive. But I think that single family homes is, you know, overlooked a lot with a lot of investors and they just want to shoot straight to the other stuff. But I'm a firm believer that, you know, not that I ever want to liquidate, but if I ever had to, I mean, it's like
it'd be a lot simpler. Yeah.
I mean, this dude's been on the market with this 22 unit for like over 6 months, and it's like the numbers are great. Like for a multifamily, it's like an 8 cap. It's great, and you could raise the rents. I mean, it would be amazing to own, but it's just been sitting there. And I'm like, I told my guy in Colorado, I was like, dude, this is like an 8 cap in a good like B area. that's hard. That's hard to find, and it's well put together. And my guy, it's like the numbers are great, but he doesn't even want to buy it, you know? So it's like, you gotta find the right person, you know? So it's, I guess if you're doing a syndication, liquidation isn't really on your mind if you've got so many investors invested, but you know, I agree with you. I'm kind of sticking to my guns on the single family and building wealth that way, because it's been so rewarding for me as far as like going back to the appreciation thing. It's like, there's no way if I had a $2 million or $1 million complex in 2021, it would have appreciated 200,000. I just don't think so, because a lot of the value is based on cap rate, you know? So if you figure 2021, your rents didn't go up 20%, but like for single family homes, not based on a cap rate, it's just the demand, you know, supply and demand thing.
Right.
In your comps. So like you know, you can't really use comps on multifamily. It's all about how much you're renting for, and you can only raise it so much every month or, you know, year, and you can't really just whack someone with like a 20-30% increase on rents, to where single family, that's just going to take care of itself over time, the appreciation factor, you know? So
right.
For sure. Well, real quick, you know, where can people go and find you if they want to, you know, work with you or something like that, you know?
Yeah. So I've Facebook or Instagram you can contact me on. So it's just at Kelby Kraft, you know, KELBY KRAFT RE for real estate. Kelby Kraft RE. So on Facebook, you just put Facebook// Kelby Kraft RE, or on Instagram at Kelby Kraft RE, and that's my page. So I kind of, you know, unfortunately, I haven't been posting a lot of my sales on there, just because I've got some people that are just the backlash and stuff of people. I don't know. I just feel like, you know, the more successful you are, the more people look at you and they're
more haters.
Screw this guy kind of guy. So I haven't posted a lot of my sales. I do, like, every once in a while I'll post something, but so if it kind of looks like a ghost town, I don't think I've posted much since, you know, the beginning of the year, just because I'm trying to keep the haters to a minimum, you know? So
don't let the haters fuel you.
I should just post all my sales in like January
day.
1st, like 300 in a row.
Yeah, be like the motivation sales trainer.
Yeah.
It's like,
dude, it's working for us, man. We started really hitting it hard, and it's, I mean, even in a couple weeks, it's like the attention is just, it's great. You know, the connections that are coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, like, that's where, for a long time before I got rolling with my investors and stuff, like moving down here, a lot of, like, I think 90% of my real estate sales were social media related, you know? So like I would get a listing and you just put it on all the groups, people contact you, build a relationship, start talking to them, get them pre-approved. I mean, I had several that were they bought a house through me, I sold their house, and they're repeat customers from social media. So I think that's a very overlooked, you know, strategy if you're in real estate sales, or if you just, like you're saying, just want connections of, you know, surround yourself with multimillionaires, you know, you'll be one. So they're out there. So